what I'm saying now is right here, right now. And I talk about God's food and we're body's God's temple. We have that perception change. So anytime during the day I find myself getting, again, guilt, shame, and remorse, it's bringing that self-centered fear in. Enjoy the day in the present for what it is. At this moment, you have to ask yourself a question. Are you on your addiction, into your addiction right here, right now? Say somebody who's compulsively binge eating or eating. Well, if you're not doing it right now, in the present, you can be that prayer meditation, that grace of God can come in. And you observe food differently. Again, I always talk about, our perception. Again, we're in prison. The corporations brainwashed us into thinking our perception was what they show us on TV or the advertisement on the internet, wherever it is. So we were brainwashed there, right? And on page 54 in the big book, it talks about when people, it's called We Agnostics is the chapter, and it says for people who don't think they can have faith, in atheists or agnostics, it says in there, if you look on page 54, it says we had faith all the time. In the world, money, success. So the perception changes when we honestly know the right from the wrong. We'll intuitively know the right thing to do in life is not make food a higher power when we get that perception change, the grace of God. Because I talked about meditation, but we're lucky, boy. We have Eastern, Western philosophies. All the different philosophies of the world are in this 12 steps. And I always say that because a lot of people come in here and they say, well, this is a cult or something like that. OA, AA, 12-step program. I've read many books and many philosophies, and they're all in these 12 steps. Everything when you read the steps and you read the first 164 pages of the big book. So the solution, either in a solution or problem, as soon as you get fearful, you're in the problem. As soon as you talk about your problems, you're making them real. If I say to you, look, this is my problem. I have a real problem with say, okay, we could say like with the food, with sweet things. I just love and I want to eat all the sweet things in the world. We're in the problem. We're trying to figure it out. We can't anymore. We have to surrender already. And God consciousness will get us to want the things healthy from God, the water. Again, this alone, and I bring this up at every meeting, will be the salvation, because how many calories do we have in drinks? Hey, look, even juice is a process. They take out the fiber. And then I have an apple, orange here too, and all of these things. Look at the perfection. And I talked before about meditating on a flower. You want to get centered, meditate on an apple. Think about that. Meditate on God's water. The perception changed. No, but what do we meditate on? All the synthetic foods, which have about 3 or 4 times the calories, and they make us sick. They have poisons in them. The body, look, I have so many things here I could talk about. Again, my profession, I'm a registered pharmacist. But all the diseases, all the illnesses, all these pills and lotions that we're taking, a lot of them aren't necessary. Yeah, of course, sometimes you need it, or an acute stage of something. But a lot of these diseases, because the way we know that is that a lot of these diseases we didn't have in this country, now we do. Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancers, and, we had them, but nothing like compared to now. And in countries, again, you want to do the research, you don't have to, you could just look on the internet and look at parts of the world where they eat healthy. So, but the healthy way of eating, what I want to say about that is that when the $1 billion diet industries, what do? They send you little morsels of food with the same poison in them. The same high caloric fats and oils and sugar, and the salt is bad. So SOS, salt, oil, and sugar. So the comprehension, the change in thinking, but it was interesting because the reason I say this is because I found myself going to meetings about my addictions and compulsions, and you know what? They got worse because I was in the problem, not the solution. I didn't want to pick up the steps and get the grace of the higher consciousness, which was in there all the time. I want to stay in the human side. You can't blame us. We were brought up in a scientific age, the age of intellectualism, right? We could figure everything out. Even when psychology first came about, what they call it psychoanalysis, they were going to figure it out. But what the interesting thing is, it was in the when Dr. Silkworth, he said, look, all the scientists, I guess psychologists and major people at the time could not figure this thing out. And here we are, almost 100 years later, and guess what? Think about it. All the scientific age and everything we've done, have we figured out the solution to the addiction or to food or compulsions? We have all these diseases that they categorize and name and trying to figure it out, but to no avail. I know in my whole life I went around trying to figure everything out, and it didn't work that way. It's only when I picked up these steps. Step 1 said we're powerless, right? So you want to hear thing. Let's get this addiction to food under an understanding. We admit we're powerless. We can't do it, right? Our best thinking got me. It's the ego, because when we think, this thinking they call it, stop thinking already. Get centered. And then your life, I'm talking about addictions with the food, of course, and alcohol and drugs. But we have what we call a dry drunk. If you want your life to be happy, joyous, and free, look, when you're thinking about things, it's usually about the past or the future. Or it's resentment towards people or anger. We have so many ways. We read here the sick man prayer. On page 552 in the big book, we pray for somebody. If you want to read that, the sick man prayer on the bottom of page 66 to 67, we read in a lot of meetings here and go through that. That's resentment, anger. These are the 7 deadly sins, but it's all based on pride. Our addiction has to do with pride. The ego doesn't want to be told what to do, how to handle life. No, we got a better way. We're going to control our food or overeat or undereat. I don't know, all these different things. Compulsion towards people. You know, it's funny. The guy said he's an obsessive compulsive, so he went to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist says, well, what do you hear? What's your problem? And the guy says, I'm upset that I'm an obsessive compulsive. That's the way it is in life. We fear the emotions. We fear the fear. Nothing to fear but fear itself. The same with these compulsions. When we're out of the self and we see a new consciousness come in and we're reborn and forget about the old. I can't figure it out. I can't figure out my old fears. It has to do with a crazy person. Step 2 said how to be restored to sanity. When I realized all my problems with me and my thinking, what does it say on page 62 also? The illusions and delusions of the mind. I thought people didn't like me, and a lot of times maybe it was true, I don't know, but 99% of the time it was me and my thinking. They have a saying, when somebody would walk in front of me, I think they were following me. That's the way we run our lives. Same with our addiction, same with everything. So step 11 says, you know, it's interesting. I always go back to the literature. I have here the 12 steps and 12 traditions of the AA. And in step 11 it says, now as we encounter step 11, we are challenged to seek out a more direct conscious contact with the ultimate source of that life-changing love. I mean, I have so many things underlined here, but here's the first sentence. The life-changing source. Some Eastern philosophy, they call it the Tao, around us, the vibrations. But when we go home and we, in our addictions, close the shades, eat the food, not eat the food, whatever it is, we can't see the vibrations in love. We have a way to do that through prayer and meditation, getting centered. Just feel the breath. I'll bring in to turn a moment. Scan the body like when you sit down. Again, I talked about the stomach. We're tied up in such knots, we don't give the body a chance to observe the food. The ego and the body and the mind, obsession of mind and body talks about the phenomenon of craving, right? It's all about the self. The main one is pride. It all has to do with the spiritual awakening. It directly related to the food. I don't know how many times, because every time it's all about, people say it's about the diet, 95% of them fail. And the other 5%, like I talk about myself, for a year I was on the grace sheet, very strict diet. I did it, and I lost all the weight. But I was so miserable that it wasn't worth it, because all of a sudden my will to do it went away, and I felt, it's not that important, and the food became more important. But now I have that perception change. I showed you the healthy food. Perceiving God's universe from the ground. I eat what's called a whole food plant-based diet, but whatever diet you eat, whole and natural. People say they have all these different types of high carb, low carb, whatever, high protein. I tell you this, it's not so much the food, but what we put on it. It's what we put on it. Mostly, a lot of foods are different if they're more healthier foods, of course. But always one ingredient is the way. Also, I say, well, what's the plan of eating just one ingredient, healthy from God's, gift? Do you realize that when we eat the synthetic food, we can't enjoy, I enjoy broccoli, carrots now. You can't taste it when you're clogging up your palate with the oil and sugar and salt and whatever else. And you can't find this food. Again, I go to a restaurant, I go to a supermarket, 95% of the foods there I can't eat. Look, first of all, it should be illegal because it's killing people, and we're killing our children, our families, ourselves. It's hurting the environment, certain things that we do in relation to food. But basically, you go in a supermarket and they have all the colors and they have songs on TV, the internet, making it like a siren song. So you want to know the truth from the false, or do you want to be a prisoner? And you can walk out of that prison right now. And I say it's to the food, but it's everything in our life. If you're miserable, upset right now about, something with your addiction or people, it's not about that. The ego and the mind is telling you everything's about, so you could be happy, joyous, and free now by realizing the truth.